Hi, this is our summary video for week 15. Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Minke. This is Minke Wellness. And we've been our YL Wellness 17. We're in April. We're now on week 15 or finishing week 15. So here's the quick summary. As you know, as I do these summaries, it's intended to give you an overview, be able to kind of scroll through the summary videos and find things that jog your memory and things. You know, I know things are busy. You can't get the whole 15-minute videos, five of those, but this is the summary. So if something catches your eye or ear, then you need to go back and follow the link that's in the description below to each one of these videos and go ahead and listen to the whole thing. Okay, so we started off with a product review of Sulfurzyme. If you've talked to me very long at all, you know how much I love Sulfurzyme. And so we talked about this as my primary detox support. The body has a detoxification mechanism involving sulfur. It's a detox pathway involving sulfur and glutathione inside the cell, and there's a whole series of that. I discuss some of that, and that's all happens in the liver, but it happens at the cellular level all over the body. The importance of sulfur, that is in terms of protein utilization, the body or actually protein synthesis, the body starts every single protein in the body with methionine. If the body does not have enough sulfur to protect itself against mercury or lead or any other toxin that detoxifies through the sulfur pathway, then what happens is it steals the sulfur from methionine, from its amino acid stores. And methionine starts every single protein of the body in every cell. Every single protein starts with methionine. So if we steal our sulfur from our amino acid pool, then we are not going to be able to make protein. So what happens is your nails get thin and your hair gets thin and brittle and your skin gets thin and your immune system drops, because those are systems that are cranking out a lot of protein. And when the body is restricted in its protein, in its ability to make protein, as in the case if it steals enough sulfur and you don't have enough methionine, then you can end up with these problems. Now, the solution can be if you give the body enough sulfur. And nutritional sulfur in the form of MSM, which is what's in Sulfurzyme, is a wonderful, very inexpensive way and very bioavailable way to get that sulfur back into the system. Yes, you could take the amino acid methionine, or you could take glutathione, but those are very expensive, tend to be very expensive supplements, and they actually don't travel into the body very well. Well, methionine probably does, but the glutathione doesn't make it into the body where it's supposed to. So they found that the idea of supplementing with glutathione is fabulous, but it just doesn't get where it needs to go, and ends up being a very expensive, difficult process. I don't want to say difficult, but I mean, it's just, MSM to me is so much cheaper and easier. MSM has different benefits aside from just being a sulfur store, so there's other reasons to take it. I take it aggressively. I'll take 6 times a day, or 6 at a time, and sometimes 6 times a day if I'm really in a hard place where I need extra support. And I talk about, basically, there's a lot of people who are taking Sulfurzyme, but they're not taking enough. In my experience, in my opinion, taking 4 Sulfurzyme a day for your average adult is going to be your basic maintenance. Okay, we're such a toxic world. We have so many toxins that we need to get rid of that we need to at least 4 capsules a day. That would be the equivalent of about a teaspoon a day. Might be. I haven't done the actual spoon calculation, but maybe a teaspoon a day of the powder if you're doing the powder. I talked about the difference between the powder and the capsule. Powder is a little bit more bioavailable. You can mix it up and let it dissolve in water. And once if they let it sit for 5 minutes, it's a little bit less bitter and goes down pretty well. Anyway, I think people should be taking 8 a day in order to see a benefit, or more. And again, I kind of talk about how I take it and all that, and so you have to watch the rest of the video for that. We switched over then to talk about the kidneys a little bit more and how they eliminate and regulate. This was a really brief overview on kidney function. So one of the most important things we need, we talk about detoxing with the Sulfurzyme and it's clearing toxins. Guess where those toxins go? They clear out through the kidneys. So we've got to make sure water. We've got to drink enough water to make sure the kidneys can flush out these toxins. And even though the liver is doing its job to neutralize, a lot of times these toxins cannot be totally neutralized. They are still toxic. They're still damaging to the body and the tissues, which means they're going to hurt the kidneys on the way out, but they are much less toxic than they were when they started. There's actually sometimes the drug metabolites, when pharmaceutical drugs get metabolized in the body, it actually turns into a compound that's even more toxic than the original. And that's one of the things that causes side effects in the body from certain medications, is that the actual breakdown product ends up being more toxic. So those definitely need to get flushed out of the kidneys as fast as they can. We don't want those hanging around the bloodstream. So we need that extra water. And so what I like to do is really get that water coming in the morning. As you know, I drink that morning water, and I do that breathing to really make sure that the water is flushing. I kind of flush the kidneys with that breathing. Breathe in and imagine flushing the kidneys, getting that water through the kidneys. The kidneys are back here, so I breathe into that with the diaphragm. I can breathe with my diaphragm and push down against and massage the kidneys, actually physically do something with my breath with the diaphragm, massaging the kidneys, but then I also use my mental participation and my consciousness to imagine bringing circulation through the kidneys and flushing the water through. And we also, as I mentioned, need good circulation. The kidneys are filtering the blood. I think it filters 200 liters a day or something like that. I don't remember the exact amount. It's a lot of fluid flowing through that filter, just like your pool filter. It's just running, and it's constant. And we need to have good circulation, good blood flow to the kidneys. If it's going to filter the blood, you got to get a lot of blood to the kidneys. So there's a lot of things that can impact the circulation to the kidneys, and that's structure. And I'll talk about that posture and structure. I'll talk about in the next video. I talk a little bit about conscious languaging and how important it is to watch how we word things and how we talk about things and regarding illness and disease. So there's a little piece on that, and you want to go watch that video for that. Again, we're talking about clearing out and letting the toxins go and reclaiming the water and electrolytes. So not only do the kidneys eliminate, but they regulate. So we got to reclaim that. So if we do our breathing and we ask the kidneys to pull that water back in, and so we get that full cycle. We're going to push the water into the kidneys, but we're going to pull it back in and reclaim that water. And we also want to reclaim electrolytes, our magnesium, potassium, sodium, chloride, all those things that we know of as the good minerals that we need to bring back. One of the things that the kidneys do is regulate. They regulate blood pressure, for example, through the renin-angiotensin system. I mentioned a little bit about that, not a lot. And there's other things that affect blood pressure that are not necessarily related to kidney. We'll talk more about that, I think, in the cardiovascular system. And then one of the things I mentioned here is that we really, really need to protect the kidneys. As I mentioned, these chemicals and toxins that are coming out through the kidneys can damage the kidneys or can affect the kidneys or irritate the kidneys. So it's very important, and bladder actually, very important to make sure we flush that through. We do not want to have a bunch of these things sitting in the bladder, sitting in the kidneys, and we want to get those things through. So we need to protect them from damage from toxins. And so that's something we talked about. Now, as I mentioned, with the third video here, we talked about posture and how posture can affect the kidneys and bladder, how we sit, the shape of our body. And you know I've talked about this in other videos, but if the chest is back and down and the hips are forward, and you can, I won't be able to show you this in this video here, but you can get an impact to the kidneys, just physical down pressure right down into the kidneys. And then we really need the organs to have their space. We don't want to jam or rotate and crunch down through the organs in general, but the kidneys are no different. We've got to make sure that so I talk a lot about getting visceral release work done, getting some professional work, getting some what's called visceral massage or visceral release work through Upledger. And most of us have had some kind of injury or accident impact significant enough to actually jam our organs and get them stuck. And that's even a small car accident, fall, bump of any significance. And people say, I ask them if you've been in a car accident, they say no. And then I ask them again, have you ever actually been inside a car that crashed? Well, yeah, a couple times, just little fender benders, but enough to bend metal, that's enough to actually jam your organs. So very important. We talk about sitting posture in chairs, how we can lose core tone. So not only do we have postures that directly affect the kidneys, but we have the bladder right here in the core. So we need to talk about core tone and making sure we get good core tone. Getting a wedge, I mentioned the Aston patterning and the Aston wedges. There's a series of seat wedges that can help you have better seated posture. So really good to look into that. On that video, I've got a link for that. And then we talk about a little exercise, nudging to really get the core tone back. So how do we get more lift, more tone up through the middle? And again, there's lots to learn. It's really hard to do all this in a relatively short video, but some of these are just exposure things so that you know that something exists so you can go chase it down. If you have questions of something you want more of, just shoot me a comment, question either on the Facebook or on the YouTube. And then I talk a little bit about raindrop therapy. For those who don't know what that is, you'll have to go look that up. And then we talk about posture and elimination. It's kind of a awkward topic people don't like to talk about, but what happens when I'm trying to poop? And if I'm straining too much, then there's probably something going on, some collapse going on, and I don't want to have to strain. So I talk about ways that we can go a spiral in our bodies to allow that to come out. There's actually a pretty long discussion in there about pregnancy and delivery. I know that sounds like a weird place to put it, but really the same process that I teach women for a sort of an easier delivery, so that the baby is spiraling out, is really kind of the same process that the poop needs to come out. I know that sounds like, I'm sorry to make that connection, but it's physically and structurally similar, and by no means the same pain levels, of course, but it's there. So anyway, great video actually to share with your pregnant friends before they go into labor, and we probably have to have a special talk on that some other time. Now, the last video we talk about parasites. Is it a real thing? Is it a myth? Or are a lot of people just in denial? And you can probably tell my bias on this. I think people are in denial. I think we got a lot more parasite issues. And so there seems to be a controversy or even hostility toward people between, when they go and talk to a medical person, a nurse or doctor, and they say, I think I got a parasite, and they just, laugh you off. And then if they ever do a test, they only test for 3 different parasites, and there are literally hundreds, if not 1,000 or so parasites that it could be going on. So we talk about defining a parasite. What is a parasite? A single versus multi-cell, single-cell organism. This is an amoeba, protozoa, and versus a multi-cell, like a worm or tapeworm. So we talk a little bit about that, and that these are not limited to the gut. These worms and these parasites, amoeba and whatnot, can be in the lungs, they can be in the thyroid, they can be in the brain, tapeworm in the brain. We had a friend, when we lived in Indonesia, we actually had a person in our company that ended up with a tapeworm in the brain. Was eating at these little local shops. You got to really watch what you eat, and that's going to be a lot of times where you're getting some of these things. So my mom was, to share a little bit about my history, my mom was in parasitology, had a master's degree, and so I grew up learning about these things, hearing about parasites, and really talking about hygiene and how important it is to have clean food, boil your water, making sure you cook your meat, don't eat raw fish, all those kind of things. And I know a lot of people are really big into raw fish. I was like, oh, no, you're never going to get me to eat raw fish after growing up with my mom. So pets, almost all pets, we always worm our pets and we worm our animals, but we don't do anything for ourselves, which doesn't make any sense. Of course, we're going to need those parasites. I gave a little bit of information about the Merck index I look up, and I talked about the parasites that are listed in there just briefly, but I mean, there's actually a lot of documentation that parasites can cause pretty bad things, including gallstones and cancer, all these things that are parasites in the gut that are well documented. So I'm not really sure why doctors refuse to acknowledge that there may be some parasite issues. But really, what can we do about parasites? So I mentioned we can keep things clean, but we also can maintain a good, healthy immune system. So your best defense against a parasite, one, is to not get it in the first place, which is to be hygienic and watch how you live. I'm not saying you can't ever take your shoes off in the grass. But just recognize that the cleaner you are, more wash your hands and that kind of thing, the better things are. And then also is to keep a healthy immune system. If your immune system is healthy, you're going to have a much easier time not getting it'll prevent the parasites from ever getting hold. Or if they do get in, they're much lower, milder, because the immune system's fighting them off as rapidly as they try to set in. So one of the best ways to do that, because you really need to get your vitamin C and your vitamin D for the immune system. We're probably going to do a lot more about immune system down the road, but that's enough for the moment. So remember, in order to have a robust immune system, you got to have our 3-part wellness strategy: stop poisoning ourselves, flood the body with nutrients, and manage our stress. All of those things directly affect the immune system. If we poison our immune system, if we don't get enough good nutrients, vitamin D and vitamin C in particular, and if we don't manage our stress, then we're not going to be able to have a healthy immune system, and we're much more likely to be affected by parasites. So that's the week in review. We've got another week coming up here with I'm just going to tag in a few sort of loose ends for our month here on elimination. So there's going to be some different things, mouth care and cleaning and a 1 day fast, talking about a 1 day liquid fast. So there's going to, and stress and elimination, all kinds of things like that. So have a great day, have a great week. Happy wellness. We'll see you tomorrow.